Good evening. Welcome to the Museum of Science. I'm James Wetzel, the Adult Programs Coordinator at the museum, and I am very excited to welcome you all to tonight's special Reno Family Foundation Symposium, Breaking Waves, an Evening with Schuyler Bailar. We ask you take this moment to turn off all of those electronic devices, including those cell phones. And if you do need to leave the program early for any reason, we ask you do so up the steps and through the exit in the rear of the theater. I'd also like to take this moment to thank two very special friends of the Museum of Science. Jack and Susie Reno established the Reno Family Foundation Symposium to sustain adult programs and to create a way for us to highlight significant scientific and cultural research. We are so grateful for the Renos, for their continued support, and for giving us the opportunity to produce valuable programs like tonight. So thank you to Jack and Susie. Schuyler Bailar graduated from Georgetown Day School in Washington, D.C. in 2014 as a top student and award-winning swimmer. He was aggressively recruited by most of the Ivy League and eventually committed to swim for Harvard University. Schuyler is the first openly transgender athlete to compete in any sport for a NCAA Division I men's team. And yes, and this... And Schuyler's difficult choice to be true to himself while potentially giving up the opportunity to be an NCAA champion was not only historical, but extremely timely. His story hit Facebook's top trending news when it came out and has since been recounted by global media outlets, including The Washington Post, 60 Minutes, and even The Ellen Show. And MTV has cited his story in their list of 2015's best moments for the trans community, and BuzzFeed named him one of the 11 transgender people who are shifting our views. And we here at the museum have continued to follow Schuyler's journey over the past couple of years, and we are extremely honored and humbled to have him here tonight. He is here to share his journey, his insights, and his perspectives for all of us in a conversation with Dr. Timothy McCarthy, and we are just excited to have them both here. And it is my honor and privilege to bring to the stage our first guest for tonight, Dr. Timothy McCarthy. Thank you.
Thank you, James, very much. Appreciate that kind introduction. Skylar, I'm looking forward to hearing from you and to having a conversation later on tonight. The way that we're going to go about the program this evening is I'm going to set the sort of context for a couple of minutes here at the beginning, and then I'll call Skylar up to have a longer conversation with you. And then following that, we will go over to the center stage table and have a conversation with the two of us, and then we'll open it up for about a half an hour or so towards the end of the program for all of you to engage with Skylar with your questions and commentary. So that's what we'll be doing tonight. It's really a thrill to be here for a couple of reasons. One is that Skylar is a student at the university where I teach at Harvard, just down the road. And so I relish opportunities, particularly this time of year, commencement season, to be in conversation with my students. Skylar and I actually just met this afternoon, but I've been very aware of him and following his career and his time at Harvard very avidly and very eagerly with great interest and admiration. So it's really wonderful to be here tonight with a student at the university where I teach. It's just always a pleasure to have that kind of opportunity to do this, particularly in public. The second reason why I'm here tonight is because I'm a historian, and I'm happy to be here. I'm a historian, and I'm someone who believes deeply in the power of history, and particularly the power of living history, of learning about the world that we live in through the lives of the people who we travel with in it. And I think it's particularly important for gay and lesbian and bisexual and transgender and queer people to do the work that we need to do to understand each other and to understand our histories and to tell our stories, because for so long they have been neglected. Yesterday, I had the great privilege and honor of participating in 2 commencement ceremonies at Harvard, which is part of a week-long series of ceremonies and rituals. In the morning, I went to the first ever Black graduation at Harvard University, where all of the graduate students who identify as Black from across the university came together with their families and professors and administrators to celebrate their excellence at a university that sometimes isn't always a place that embraces them. And then in the evening, I had the opportunity and honor again to be part of the Stoling ceremony at the 3rd annual Latinx graduation in the evening, where our Latinx students from across the university, including the college, came together to celebrate each other and to celebrate their own histories and families, and for us to have the opportunity to honor them as well. Again, a group of people who are extraordinary and excellent, and yet are at a university that is not always open and embracing of them. And one of the things that struck me in those two ceremonies, one in the morning and one at night, was how often people who spoke, the students and their family members, talked about the importance of firsts, the importance of the trailblazers, of the people who came before them, of the folks whose shoulders they stand on. And sometimes these people were trailblazers and very visible and were people of great renown and acclaim. And sometimes those firsts, those trailblazers, and many of my students are those kinds of people, are folks who do it more quietly, more humbly, outside of the public gaze of visibility. And I think about this tonight because Skylar is one of those people who is a first, who is a trailblazer, who is someone whose shoulders future generations will stand on and look back to with great pride and admiration. And that's how history moves. History moves in waves. And it moves because of the people who break those waves. And that's the title of tonight's program, Breaking Waves. And I think about that metaphor and that image. It was interesting. Earlier today, I was reading a Crimson article, a profile of Skylar in our university's newspaper. And it starts with the kind of image of Skylar in the water and of a photographer that he had chosen to take his picture for this piece. And the photographer was trying to capture the right moment, the moment where he emerged from underwater and broke through the water to be visible, to do the breaststroke, which is his event. And I was thinking about that image, both literally and metaphorically, of being both in the water and out of the water, being underneath and above, of being in and out, of being public and visible and also private and invisible. And that image, which, again, you can see in this piece, is also metaphorical when we think about the ways in which we all exist in history. And for LGBTQ people in particular, our history is often more in than out, more invisible than visible, more beneath and below than above and outside. And that's for a whole host of reasons. One is that the people who have made our histories over the years have often been neglected, marginalized, maligned, discriminated against. It's also because our schools fail and refuse to teach our histories. When I was growing up in the 80s, the only images of queer people I had were those who were dying of the AIDS epidemic. There were no heroes and heroines, folks who have blazed trails and made history and done things that would have given me a sense of pride, would have helped me to be bolder and braver and more accepting of my own queer identity at that age, was never taught those histories. So many marginalized groups are not taught their histories, African Americans and Latinx folks and other marginalized groups. And so, in a sense, the task falls on us to recover those histories, to document them, to tell our stories, which are part of that larger set of stories. And so that's what we will do tonight. We will hear from a trailblazer, one who breaks waves and makes waves. And we will hear his story, which is an inspiring one. And that itself will be a form of living history for our broader history and for all of us here tonight. And I'm just thrilled to be here in this moment to bear witness to it. So without further ado, let me call to the stage Schuyler Bailar.
Hi, everybody. How's it going? I'm super excited to be here today. Thank you so much, Tim, for such a wonderful introduction. It's so cool also that you teach at Harvard. Could never imagine doing something like we're crazy people. I don't know. Anyways, yeah. So the main thing that I want to make sure that I say before I get to talking to you all is that this is a conversation. I think Tim touched on that, James touched on that, but I don't want to just talk at you. I will for about 10 to 15 minutes, but then we're going to have a conversation, Tim and I, and then I want to have a conversation with you all. So just be thinking of questions, think of things that you are concerned about and want to talk about, because I really want this to be a conversation. And Tim has called me trailblazer several times, but the reality is I started out as a little kid, just like everybody else. So I want to take you through just a little bit of me as a kid. I've always been a water baby. I guess my cheeks are like slightly less pudgy these days, but still got a rockin' haircut. Another rocking haircut. I started competing when I was about 6, and I had excellent style. I had that shirt for like 10 years. I think I'm like 9 in that picture. Another example of excellent haircuts. This is Halloween, I think in 4th grade, and I wanted to be gangster, and I decided that all gangsters wore black clothing and had chains and mohawks. So the mohawk is there. It is made out of Elmer's glue. Elmer's glue, it works, it really does. It also, even more importantly, comes out. So, notice there's no more mohawk here. I have a younger brother, and we did everything together. We're super outdoorsy kids. He was my best friend of all time. He still is one of my best friends. Again, water sports, super important to me. I've always been drawn to the water. It's always been a place I've been more comfortable, and that will come into play later in this conversation. This is the peacock pose. My mom did yoga, and I thought that this was really cool, so I decided to do this all the time. I still do it all the time, and it's my mom calls it the pose, and I do it in various places when we go on trips, and there's about 1 billion pictures of me doing that. I would say my haircut is a little bit better, and I don't have those khakis anymore. X Games sort of sports, I really like to skateboard. I still do it, just not nearly as crazy as I did then. Although, note that I have literally every pad known to man on. There are butt pads under my pants. Thanks, Mom. So when I got to high school, a lot of things changed. And the main thing is that, like I have been introduced by Tim and James, I am transgender. And that means that when I was born, I was assigned female at birth. And so I went through my childhood kind of just expressing myself the way I felt comfortable doing so, and that was in cargo pants, it was in crappy haircuts, it was in Hawaiian shirts, it was in Elmer's glue. I just did me. And my parents allowed that. Nobody really told me I wasn't supposed to do that, and they let me express myself the way I felt comfortable expressing. All my friends were boys. I just did what the other boys did, and that was fine. I definitely went through bullying. There were people. I still went to the girls' bathroom because, like I said, I was assigned female at birth, and so I was told to go to the girls' bathroom, so I did. And I did not look like a girl, so everybody in the girls' bathroom always yelled at me. They're, what are you doing in here? Like, why are you here? Like, you can't be in here. And I'd be like, I just have to pee. But it was a very stressful experience to me. And over time, we had one gender-neutral bathroom in the school, in my middle school, and I went to the same school from kindergarten through 12th grade. And the one gender-neutral bathroom was labeled adults only. And I figured that it was better to be yelled at for going into the adults-only bathroom because it was a single stall than it would be to be yelled at and going to the girls' bathroom. So I would run from the other end of the school, and hopefully not get caught for running in the school too, to go to this gender-neutral bathroom. And it became like a stressor to me, specifically the bathrooms, because I would have to figure out my day so that I would go to the bathroom at a time when there's the least amount of people around. And this is like, a 4th grade kid, a 6th grade kid trying to schedule his day so that he could pee without stressing out about it. And it was even worse outside of school if I had to go to public restrooms where, the women's bathroom line is always really long and you always have to wait in it. And if a boy is waiting in that line, it looks funky. And so that was stressful for me. And I really got sick of that. So my dad always told me when I was in middle school, because I got bullied a lot also by the kids, and they would say, you're not a girl. Like all the girls were like, you're not a girl, but the boys were like, you're not actually a boy. So I was sort of stuck in this in between. And I most of the time was a pretty happy kid, and I was like, you know what? That's just who I am. I'm just weird, and it's fine. I'm just me, and I was okay with that. But it would get to me at times. And my dad always said, Skylar, when you grow up, you're going to be this beautiful woman, and all the girls are going to want to be you, and all the boys are going to want to date you. So I'm sitting around in my cargo pants and crappy haircut and Hawaiian shirt going, okay, I'm going to have to figure out how to become this beautiful woman, you know? So I went to Target and bought women's clothes for the first time. I wore makeup twice. I wore high heels twice. I tried to play the part, and I did. This is me in high school. Same watch. Yeah, so I looked the part. Nobody yelled at me in the women's bathroom anymore. People were like, "Oh my God, you're so beautiful! You finally grew your hair out! Like, yay, you look like a girl finally." And I wanted all of this sort of like feeling of fitting in. That's what I was looking for. I was hoping that I wouldn't feel like I didn't belong anywhere. I was hoping that the women's bathroom would feel more comfortable, the locker would feel more comfortable. I was hoping that I would feel more comfortable, and I didn't. As time went on, I felt more and more misaligned with myself, and I didn't have the words to explain how I felt. I just knew that I didn't feel right. But at the same time, so this is me, my senior year, but throughout most of high school, I was getting increasingly faster in swimming. I had a 4.0 GPA. I was getting recruited by the Ivy League schools, and so all of my external factors were going really well. And in the beginning of my senior year, right around this time, I think actually like a week after that, I committed to swim for Harvard University. So we're setting national age group records. I'm swimming faster than I've ever swum before. I've got an acceptance letter to the school that I wanted to go for a few years. I'm swimming for that school. Everything is working out, right? But I was miserable. And I did not know how to explain to people why I was miserable, because there's no actual reason that I should be miserable, right? I have everything that I could want. And people were always like, you're pretty, you're smart, and you swim fast. Like, what do you need? And I'd be like, I don't know, you know? But as my senior year went on, and I fell deeper into depression, deeper into the eating disorder that I had, deeper into sort of other maladaptive coping mechanisms and self-destructive behaviors, by this time in my senior year, this is my prom, so around May, so almost exactly, 2017? Exactly 3 years ago. I had actually put myself in the hospital from some of my mental illness struggles, and my therapist was like, we can't do this anymore. You need to get help, like actual help. Because I had been in therapy for about two or 3 years at that point, because I had depression, I had this eating disorder, and nothing was helping. I wasn't figuring anything out, and I was just getting worse. And we actually decided to defer from school and send me to a treatment center. So I spent the next 131 days directly after graduation from high school in a treatment center for eating disorder rehabilitation, which is a fancy way of saying a therapy center where I spent all of my hours. I was watched, not me specifically, but it's a group of people, and you're watched basically all the time. And it's a lot of therapy. It's 131 days. And it was there for the first time in my life that I was able to say to myself and to my family and the people around me, I am transgender. That you'd think would come with relief, and it did initially, because I was like, okay, well, this is why the word like gay didn't work for me, and why the word woman doesn't work for me, and why I don't feel comfortable in the bathrooms, and why I don't feel comfortable in women's clothing. But I'm an athlete, right? And I was recruited to swim for the Harvard women's swim team at this point. And so I'm sitting there like, okay, so now I know I'm transgender. I know that I'm so uncomfortable with myself. I'm so depressed because I'm a boy, but nobody can see that. But I also want to be this fantastic like female athlete. How do I hold that? And I didn't hold it. I didn't know what to do. And my coach, so the coach who had recruited me at the on the women's team at Harvard, her name is Stephanie Morawski, and she had told me when I deferred, so I took a gap year to go to treatment, and when I deferred from school for a year, I told her, obviously, because I wasn't going to show up in the fall and swim for her, and she was like, okay, just keep me posted. Like, tell me about what's going on. Tell me about what you're working on. She majored in psychology at Harvard, so she's like, just tell me what's going on. So I called her after figuring out that I was trans. And she was like, so what have you been working on? I said, oh, just some parent stuff, some food stuff, some gender stuff, and she goes, hold on. Some gender stuff? And I sat there on the phone. I remember sitting in this room, and the couches are pink, and the doors were glass. I remember the room very clearly, and I sat there being like, do I tell her? Do I potentially lose my spot on this team by saying this one word? Because, the word transgender is not particularly a nice word in the vernacular. A lot of people have a lot of bad connotations with this word. But I just was like, you know what? I've spent 5 months trying to be honest with myself, and why not be honest now? So I said, I think I'm transgender, and I don't know what it means. I only know that I want to keep swimming. And she said to me, Skylar, we recruited you. We love you. The team loves you. I love you. If you want to swim, you have a spot on this team. And that was incredible, right? Because now at least I knew I wasn't going to lose my spot on the women's team. Like, I could still swim, and my identity, at least the declaration of my identity, wasn't going to lose me the thing that I love the most. But as the year continued, the coach and I were talking a lot about what it would mean to be a transgender person, but be on a women's team, like being a transmasculine person on a women's team, what it would mean to the team, what it would mean about logistics and rules. And as we went through that process, I came out to the women's team, and they were all incredibly supportive of me and super excited to have me on the team, which was, again, something that was really helpful to me. But I also started realizing that I wanted to transition. I wanted to get my breasts removed in a mastectomy, which is a gender confirmation surgery. I wanted to go by male pronouns. I wanted people to see me as male and to use male pronouns everywhere. And I talked to Steph about that, the women's coach, and she was like, so how are you going to live this dual life? You're going to be like a woman in a pool, but then a man in school? Like, how are you going to do both? And I was like, I was optimistic. I was like, I'm going to figure it out. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. Okay, it wouldn't have been fine. So she kept on telling me, like, are you sure? Are you sure? But she also was like, look, Skylar, I'm not going to tell you what to do. Like, this is your life. You have to make the decision. You need to figure out what you need to do for yourself. And she actually went and talked to the men's coach at this point, because she really didn't trust that it was going to work for me to be like half woman and half man. The men's coach, she just talked to him. It wasn't like an asking of a favor. It was just having a conversation. And Kevin Tyrell is the men's coach. And she said to him, I have this kid. He's trans. I recruited him to swim here, but I don't know what to do now. And just kind of explained the situation. And Kevin looked at her and was like, okay, well, so the kid identifies as male, and he's a swimmer, and he's going to Harvard. And I am a men's coach, so I have a men's team that swims, and I'm a coach at Harvard. Why doesn't he swim for me? Which, logically put in the way I just put, makes a lot of sense, right? But think about this, Harvard, Division I, men's coach, he's just a coach, he doesn't know a whole lot about any of this. And he's an incredible man for that proposition, in my opinion. And so he was just like, why doesn't he swim for me? So Steph brings this to me now, and I'm sitting in her office, and she's telling me, okay, so now you have the option to swim on either team. And I burst into tears. And I was not happy. I was not relieved. I was not excited. I was terrified. I was so scared. I was in so much pain. And the reason was because now I was sort of sitting at a crossroads. Here's me thinking. I looked a little different when I was thinking about this now. But, so I'm sitting at this crossroads, and on one side, I've got everything that I've ever worked for, everything I thought I've ever worked for on the female side of things. I wanted to be a really successful female athlete at Harvard. I had hopes of making nationals. I had hope of going to NCAAs, maybe even being like a champion there, potentially going to Olympic trials. I had a lot of goals, and my coaches had a lot of goals for me on that side of things. On the other side, I've got basically to start over. And I've been working for years, 131 days in the treatment center, to be myself, to be honest, to be authentic, and to be happy, most importantly. But that's a huge risk. It's a huge risk to just be happy or even take a step that might make you happy. And so I'm sitting there thinking about these, and it was a horrible month. It was 2 years ago. And the month of April, and I went to Visitas. If you know anything about Harvard, there's a pre-frosh weekend where you get to go, and it's basically it's supposed to be your senior year, but it was my gap year, and you see Harvard and you see the student life a little bit. And for the swim team, we have a lot of swim team events, and I spent Visitas going to both the women's team and the men's team events, so I was switching all over the place, and it was really hectic, and I would not recommend it. But I did that, and I got to meet both teams, and the men's team was awesome, and the captains were awesome, and everybody was awesome, and I hated it. Because it made my decision even harder, because at that point, if the men's team was horrible, I'd be like, okay, can't do that. But they were amazing. And so I was really wrestling with all this. But after I came back from that weekend, I was talking to Steph, and she said to me, the women's coach, and she said to me, Skylar, you're standing at the edge of a cliff, and you actually have a safety harness on, and you need to jump. You need to take that risk because it's going to be good. Like, you just need to do that. And we're all here for you. We're all there. You just need to jump. So I wrote her an email that night saying in the email, I think I'm going to jump. So I did.
Introducing the Harvard Crimson, the freshman from Washington, D.C., Schuyler Bailar.
So that's me swimming my first meet as male. And I remember standing, like we stand at this edge of the pool, see where this dude is right there? We stand there before the meet starts, and they play the national anthem. And I'm looking at the pool, and it's the same 25-yard pool that I've ever swum in before. It's the same chlorinated water that makes everybody's eyes turn red, makes you cough. It's the same breaststroke that I've swum since I was 4. It's the same race that I've swum since I was like 8. They have shorter races when you're younger. But it's the same, right? It's the same buzzer that goes off. It's the same take your mark, go. It's the same flags. But I'm standing there, and they're playing. It's the same national anthem. I'm standing there, and I've got my hand over my heart, just like I always do. And I realize that that's something different, because before, when I had my women's suit on, so the women's suit has straps right here, right? And I would put my thumb on one side of the strap and all my fingers on the other side of the strap. But I stood there with my hand over my heart, and there was no strap. And it's because I was just wearing a Speedo. And I realized that though everything was the same, everything was also different, because for the first time in my life, I was swimming as just myself. And that's why I'm here talking to you today, because I didn't have, like Tim was saying, I didn't have the people when I was younger to see, okay, I can be myself and be out and do what I love. I can be whoever I want to be in terms of being queer specifically, but just generally, and be a swimmer. And so I share my story because I want people to know that I exist, but not I as in Schuyler Bailar. I mean, I as a trans athlete, I as a queer athlete, I as somebody who's out and successful and happy at Harvard, doing things that I love, because I really want everybody to know that they can be who they are and do what they love. So thank you. Okay, we have more clapping later. So now Tim and I are going to have a conversation, and we're going to leave that up there because why not? And then we're going to have a conversation with all of y'all. But first, it's me and Tim. So I'm really excited to invite him back up on stage.
Awesome. Why don't you sit over there? Okay. So first of all, I just want to say how moved I was by that. That's the first time I've heard you tell your story. I've heard your story or read your story told by other people, and it was really moving. So many things were moving about that. So first of all, I just want to acknowledge that. Thank you. Let me start by asking you a question about swimming. So one of the things we learned in the build up to this event this week is that we're both athletes at Harvard. Not currently. But believe it or not, at one point in the history of the world, I was also an athlete, both a basketball player and a track athlete. And so I know what it's like to love a sport and to have your identity in so many ways shaped by that, particularly if you're successful early on and then you become more successful and then you get achievements and so forth, and how much that can become all-encompassing. But one of the things that was interesting in your references to swimming, first you said that you were more comfortable in the water than you were anywhere else.
Yeah.
And then you also talked about looking at the water and seeing this thing that had been so familiar to you forever, and then feeling yourself and being in that moment, it was so different. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about swimming and how swimming as a sport and as a practice and as a place has shaped your identity over time.
So I think the first thing to know about me is that I learned how to swim the same time I learned how to walk. So swimming has been integral to my life, and people ask me, like, do you get dizzy when you do flip turns, which is like, at the end of the pool you do a little turn, you flip around, and I'm like, well, do you get dizzy when you go walking? Like, I don't, and so it's such an integral part of my life that I would never really imagine my life without it. The water is something that I just feel so comfortable with. But I think that it has shaped so many different aspects of my life, because swimming isn't just, bobbing around in a pool and being able not to drown. Swimming is also determination. It's working through 3 hours of grueling practices and 10,000 yards in a day, which is about 6 miles, to get to a goal that is potentially unachievable, potentially like half a second of a race. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of, I think, life lessons that I learned from swimming that shaped who I am. You stare at a black line for like 3 hours a day. You start thinking about things, and it's not the same kind of team sport, I'd say, that as most other team sports. Like, you don't pass a ball to somebody and they're shooting. Like maybe you're doing a relay, but it's still your section. And so I think there's something very individual about that maybe also shaped how I go through the world. But I think when I transitioned and things sort of flipped over, it's still, again, the same sports, the same waters, the same swimming, but it's also entirely different because in the competitive side of swimming, I've most always been able to be competitive with everybody around me. So as a female athlete, I could always potentially beat people. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And now on the men's side, it's not actually possible really for me right now, or maybe possible is not the right word maybe, but it's not, that's not one of my goals right now.
Yeah.
It's not to beat people and to beat everybody. Sure, do I not want to lose? Yeah, I hate losing.
Right.
But it's not like I'm not going to the race potentially going to win. I'm going to the race trying to beat myself.
Yeah.
And it's entirely different social or sports psychology, I think, that shapes the way I look at the competitive side of the sport, but not the actual sport. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you would say that, because first of all, you never get over hating to lose. If you're used to
I don't want it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's very interesting to me, because I was wondering like how you've navigated that, because you went from a play. I mean, you swam with Katie Ledecky, right? When you were in high school. I mean, you were a rock star swimmer, and with real aspirations around championships in college, and perhaps you yourself said the Olympic trials and so forth. So very big aspirations, and I'm wondering like how did you navigate that shift, right? The shift of being oriented around the most kind of successful achievements in competition to something else, but still within the sport itself. So like how did you navigate that? It couldn't have gone super seamlessly.
No, it did not.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
I think that, so I was doing some work on it before, and my take on this is sports psychology, not Skylar sports psychology, it was like general, because I did sports psychology a little bit before, because I had a therapist in sophomore year who was a sports psychologist therapist.
Right.
And one of the things that I learned during that is that you're most successful not when you're trying to get a specific time or get a specific medal or win a specific race. You're most successful when you're doing the sport because you love it and you're competing because you love that. You know what I mean? And I had lost that in my freshman and sophomore years in high school because I was so focused on winning that I lost my drive in the sport because I lost my love of it. Right. And I had sort of learned to regain that because in my junior year, before I started my junior year in high school, in the summer of 2012, I broke my back. And when I broke my back, I was taken out of swimming it was actually only 2 whole months, which is an extraordinarily short amount of time for fracturing 3 vertebrae. Yeah. But I had never been inactive for that long. Yeah. And swimming was ripped from me. And that was a time that I was also I came out as gay at that time. So it was just a time of like intense personal turmoil, and then to not be able to dump it in the pool and dump it in practice drove me insane. And that's when I started a lot of my mental health issues. Right. But my point is more that I think during that time, when I came back to swimming after that, while I was still wrought with a ton of other issues because I still hadn't figured out the root of my issues, I was so happy to just be in the pool, to feel myself swim, to feel the water, that I was like, okay, I have to just do this because I love it. And then I swam faster than I ever swum before, and that's when I got recruited to swim for Harvard, and I was like, okay, this works. I'm going to keep doing this. And that is something that I've continued more so than ever, because now it's survival, not just what's good for me, on the men's team, because like I said, it's just not realistic for me to go into the race saying I'm going to win. I'm like 2 years on testosterone. The guys on the team are 6 to 8 years on testosterone. You know what I mean? Like, and they're taller and they're bigger and whatever. There's many things, and it's not excuses. It's just maybe I can get there, but it's going to take time, and maybe not. Who knows? Right. But it's much more important for me to go into thinking, okay, I get to swim. That's huge. Like that's a privilege. I didn't realize that was a privilege beforehand, before breaking my back. And now I get to swim at Harvard. That's obviously a privilege. And I get to swim with these teammates that I love, and I get to push myself, and I think that's something that I have to always come back to and realize that that's what's important and not the winning part.
Yeah.
Of course, winning is also important, but
Yeah, no, that's great. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the team and coaches. One of the things that I was very moved by is that Steph, the women's coach, I was in college with her, and my roommates, as I mentioned to you earlier, were on the swimming and diving teams, and one of my roommates was the captain of the team, the women's team, our senior year. And so I have a kind of long-standing connection. I used to go to formals with all the swimmers and divers back when I was straight, the women swimmers actually. So I had my own relationship back and forth with the men's and women's swim teams. It's probably an overshare, but here we are. Okay. Sorry, Reno family. But the team is such an important part, right? I mean, it is individual in many ways, obviously the relays, but all the individual events. But it is such a team, and it's such a close-knit team, and the men's and women's teams are close, right? And it seems to me that your story, in some ways, is one of enormous good fortune and luck to have had two coaches, right, in Steph and Kevin, who were willing to work with you and to find a space for you once you figured out what that space was. And so, and then the teams themselves, you've talked about how important those folks are, how they were important in the recruitment process during Visitas, and now again, we were talking backstage about wanting to live nearer to your teammates and so forth on campus. So talk a little bit about that, the role that they've played, right, in this, not just in swimming and finding your place as an athlete, but in finding your place as a person with respect to your transgender identity.
Yeah, I think, well, the first thing that I always say about both the coaches is they help save my life, and the first part is that Steph gave me the space to even talk about my identity, and that didn't come from her being supportive once I'd said something. It came from whatever she gave me that made me feel like I could even tell her.
Right.
And I think that's about personality, that's about understanding, that's just about how you carry yourself in life. Right. And she's very mom-like, she's very open. I was afraid that I would lose things, but there was something, I think I wouldn't have said it if I actually was afraid that I was going to lose it. Right. And there was something about her that made me feel like, okay, I can talk about this, and I'm safe. And I wasn't sure about the women's team, but I knew that she was respected on the women's team, and because she's respected on the women's team, they were going to respect me. Yeah, right. And so that's important too, about having like leaders that you can really respect. Yeah. And she took so much time to talk with me and to go through what was best for me, and it was not in her best interest to have me transition. Right. I was the top breaststroker that she recruited, and I was seated to break her the records on the team and to be their breaststroker. Yeah. And they didn't have a backup. And so she said that to me too. She was like, "Skylar, look, I'm not trying to push you onto the men's team because if it were my interest, I would not push you there, Right. But I cannot, as a person and as a mother, do this and without that on my conscience. Like I want you to be happy, and also like sad swimmers are slow swimmers. So if you like,
she's got these great lines like a woman in the pool and a man in school and right. I love that. That's great.
So she's very much a mother in that way, and she was always like, happy swimmers are fast swimmers, sad swimmers slow swimmers. So she would say that to me repeatedly. I'm like, I figured it out. I'm gonna be happy. It's gonna be fine. She'd be like, okay, but actually, so that was also helpful because she challenged me on it. And I really didn't feel pushed in either direction. And then Kevin has also been incredible because he gave me the opportunity to be on the men's team, first of all. And then second of all...
Which he didn't need to do,
right? He didn't have any...
a certain number of slots, right?
And he has plenty of... Well, the slots aren't... that because I'd already got into the school, the slots are actually not relevant. And that's a point that people like to make, is that I stole somebody's spot. So didn't steal anybody's spot. But anyway, so he gave me the opportunity to be on the team. But then I think there's two things. One, he had taken a class on gender or something just because he thought it would help him be better as a coach. Like, he had no idea I existed or anything. He just had taken that before he met me. And I thought that was really cool because it had nothing to do with me. It was just because he wanted to learn. And so there's that. He also got plenty of backlash from alumni and other people about letting me on the team in the first place when the story broke. So he's going against a grain, which I thought was also really respectable. But then the other thing is, he doesn't know everything about me, and he doesn't know everything about what you're supposed to do about trans athletes, and neither do I. So we kind of are doing that together. And I think that was something that he really also helped me with. He is clearly the leader because he is the adult. I mean, I'm technically an adult, but I'm not a real adult. He's the.
You will be. There's plenty of time. Don't worry about that. Yeah.
I did turn 21, but I don't feel any more adult.
Yeah.
So, anyways, he's the kind of the coach, the leader, the adult with a capital A, and he has led that way, but he's also let me lead in still feeling like letting me feel safe and like I am the kid.
Yeah.
And I think that's also really important because while I do need to help him figure out what is best for me because only I really know those things. It is also so helpful to not feel like I'm the one figuring everything out alone.
Right,
you know.
right.
And one of the things he did was he asked his whole team before he even offered me the spot if they wanted to be the kind of team to bring on a kid who's transgender, and the whole team said yes.
Wow.
And he said, okay, if you have like reservations or comments, like come talk to me in my office. Like we can talk about this. It's not something that everybody has to be peer pressured into, and nobody did.
Wow.
And he's had that consistently because while I am just another guy, I'm also not just another guy.
Yeah.
And people have had, we haven't had many issues, and he's just very good about dealing with those. And he also asked me what bathroom I wanted to use and was like, if you ever have anything that goes wrong on campus, like you call me and I'm there, or if you feel uncomfortable in the men's locker room, like you can change in my office. And so he's been very good about creating options, and I haven't needed to use any of the safeties, but they're there, and that makes the non-safeties safe, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I just want to mark that, right, for anybody who's in education or in coaching or in any kind of position where that leadership is required.
Yeah.
It's still uncommon, far too uncommon. So I want to really mark those two, Steph and Kevin in particular, and other people out there who are doing that kind of work and leading in that particular way, and teammates who do that. I mean, you just said he took a course on gender, and I'm thinking, my God, things have definitely changed. I had several coaches in my time that could have used a course or two on gender.
He's pretty unique.
No, that's
Because that's the other question I get
Yeah.
is, do you think that like this would have happened at any school? And my answer is absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Yeah, that's interesting. So I want to talk for a couple questions about being transgender, that experience. And the one question I had stems from a couple things you said in your talk, is that, so much of the coming to terms with our identities, whether they're transgender identities or being gay or bisexual, sexuality, is an internal process, right? It's coming to terms with who you are and loving yourself and being comfortable in your own body and all these things. And that's a really hard process, right? Which both of us know. And yet a lot of it has to do with the external, right? The signals that we receive in society, the kinds of binary thinking, especially with respect to gender and often sexuality too, that you're either a boy or a girl, or you're either masculine or feminine, male or female, et cetera, and these are the only options, and there are particular ways in which you perform that and do that work and signal to the world so that they can accept you in some way. And if you don't do that, right, you put Elmer's glue in your hair, or you skateboard, or you do whatever, you wear particular types of clothing, that somehow you disrupt the external world's sense of what you should be.
Right.
And, on the one hand, it's like, well, who cares? It's not about you, it's about me. But we all know the reality is much more complicated than that, and often much more burdensome. So talk to me a little bit about how you navigated that, how you came, because it's clear that you were working on this from a very early age in terms of the way that you were performing gender and your identity and understanding that and showing it to the world. But how much of those external stigmas and stereotypes and prejudices weighed on you, and how did they weigh on you, and how have you gotten to a point at this point? I know we're on a journey, but how have you gotten to a point where you're better at navigating the external stuff?
So I think when I was younger, I had this facade of I don't care. Like I know I'm weird, I know I'm different. Right. Everybody calls me a tomboy. I call myself a tomboy religiously, and that's just the way I am, and I took very much pride in that. I wanted to be different because I think it came from being different, but then being like, okay, if I'm going to be different, then I'm going to be good at it.
You're going to own it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And that that was the Elmer's glue, that was the skateboarding, that was I really like to screw with people's gender norms because I was like, fine, if you're going to call me weird because I'm doing different things with my gender, then I'm going to do things weird with my gender.
Right.
And there were definitely times where I went overboard, and one of my teachers wrote in 4th grade on my comments like, Skylar, is being purposefully disruptive to norms, not because this is actually how Skylar identifies, but because Skylar's trying to disrupt norms. And that's definitely true. In fourth grade, I was like, because I was so sick of what I had to be, And I would never.
And then it's the disruption that becomes the problem, not the norms themselves.
Right, exactly. And I wasn't a disruptive kid. Like, I did well in school, and my teachers mostly liked me, but I messed with things that people thought were normal, and I took pride in doing so. And I think as a kid, I didn't have the words for why I did that. I just never saw myself being like the other girls, and I saw myself being like the other boys. But then I had this sort of wall that was like, but I'm not, but I can't be. But when I grow up, I'm gonna have to be a woman. And that terrified me, because when I remember when I was a kid, my brother and I had rooms that were next to each other, and they were joined by this little hallway. And my dad would sit in the hallway and sing to us like before bed. And he always sang the same two songs. And I, like, as a kid, remember thinking, when I grow up, I'm gonna be my dad. I'm gonna sing to my kids in their hallway like that. And it wasn't, I'm gonna be my dad and sing to the kids. It was, I'm gonna be the dad, not the mother.
Oh, interesting.
And I remember having this kid, one of my best friends at the time was this kid named Daniel. My mom was like, "Are you gonna marry Daniel?" Because it was like a joke or whatever. And I was like, "Yeah, of course." And then I realized that if I married Daniel, he would be the dad. And he would be the one who was singing. And then I was like, wait a second, how is that gonna work if I'm gonna be the dad, but he's gonna be the dad, but I'm supposed to be a woman, but I wanna be it was so confusing to me. And I was, I don't know, 9. I didn't think about it a whole lot. It was just confusing, and I moved on. But that was something that was consistent. I saw myself growing up as a man. We had a project in 4th grade or 5th grade, and we had to do 2 faces that were made out of clay, and then you painted them. And there's supposed to be one now that was supposed to be you at that time, and one when you were older. And I'm an overachiever and impatient, so I made 4. And it was me now, and it was very clearly me now. I had like this Bieber haircut. My braces were the same color as my braces. And then the next one was like I don't know, a 25-year-old man. The next one was like kind of my dad, like a graying version of my dad, but more my hair color. And the last one was my grandpa, with glasses and everything. And I brought it home, and I didn't explain to anybody what it was. I was just like, "This is my project from school," and everybody's like, "Okay, cool." And if they asked me, I would say, "Oh, it's a boy getting older," But I would never say it was me, and I wasn't secretive about it. I just didn't know what to say, and I was really embarrassed. The fact that when I had painted this project, it had come out into an old man. I was like, "What? I'm not supposed to be an old man." But that is hanging in my room now, and it's very indicative of my process.
Yeah. Good for you. Yeah. I love the way that art represents things for folks. Good. I wanted to ask you a question about the politics of trans identity. And we talked earlier before that, queer folks can't just be, right? You got to be in the world, which means that the world politicizes. The kinds
my
of
existence is political,
of course, and particularly so right now. And I think, in a sense, there's a tension with respect to transgender identity and trans issues in politics, because on the one hand, we have now more visibility around transgender people, a whole range of different ways of being trans in the world. The trans visibility in movies and celebrity culture and sports and so forth. I mean, there's more of that now than ever. I mean, I remember just at Harvard, right? When I was an undergraduate, I was in the closet, didn't want to go anywhere near the queer groups. We didn't use the word queer then, although some people called themselves Queer Nation. That was a kind of more radical positioning. But there was no T in the BGLSA. The T was added later on in the mid to late 90s. And there's the visibility within the community, and in some cases the acceptance has grown enormously over the last decade or two. And yet at the same time, there's a fierce backlash going on right now against transgender individuals in particular. And so you have on the one hand an enormous amount of progress and visibility and even acceptance, and then on the other hand there's this unbelievable backlash against all of that you see in opposition to anti-discrimination bills. The bill that was passed, that people colloquially call the Trans Rights Bill in Massachusetts, passed in 2016, and I know you gave some testimony for that. It's coming back up on the ballot in 2018 for a public referendum. All of these so-called bathroom bills are being used to malign the trans community, and there are whole sets of reasons for that. So how do you, in this particular moment, coming of age at a moment of increasing trans visibility, but also a backlash and increasing discrimination and hate crimes and violence against the trans community. How do you position yourself in that way, in that very distinctively political existence?
In 2 words, with hope. And 4, with strength. I think that the biggest thing that I have to hold on to is that we as marginalized people have always come out in some way on top. It just takes a while sometimes. And I think that I talked about this a lot when the election happened, and when Trump was elected, that like we have always found a way to have strength, to persevere, to figure out how to get our rights. And that doesn't come without carnage, it doesn't come out without violence, or not violence, but struggles, I guess, most of the time with violence. But my point is that we are strong, and we have been beaten down for years, for millennia, really. Anybody who's marginalized, that can be, people of different religions, people of different races, people of different backgrounds of any sort. But I think right now the trans people are particularly marginalized. I don't see in any historical situation where we haven't eventually figured it out. And I think that's really important to recognize, and really important to hold on to that hope, because that's going to bring us forward. So I think that's the biggest thing that I remember in terms of just like conceptualizing it. But I think logistically, I do a lot of this kinds of speaking, and I think education is one of the biggest parts of bringing trans rights into our Constitution and just into the vernacular, because if you know a trans person, it's so much easier to understand their personhood than it is to just say, okay, this person is transgender, and just look at the media and kind of cast them off as other.
Right.
And I know that people do that with me. It's much like when somebody meets me and they interact with me and they realize that I too miss class, and I too like have a brother who annoys me, and I too have like aunts and uncles and fights with my parents, and I'm a person too. And while being trans is a huge part of my identity as a person, I'm also just a kid. And that's something that I share a lot with high school students and middle school students, and when I do speeches with like banks and stuff, that's what they see. And I think that's really important to me, is getting rid of that otherness, and that education, I think, and that is what I can bring, and I think that can help change people's perspectives.
So, and I absolutely agree with this. I think that the changing hearts and minds, I talked before about how important living history and how important stories are, and how important you being willing to do this is. And I've seen that in the LGBTQ community over time, the way that hearts and minds have changed as a result. That has resulted in these advances in certain respects. But there's still a lot of stigma, right? There's still a lot of violence. There's still a lot of discrimination, both outside of the community and also in it. I mean, I want to be clear about that too, that the LGBTQ community, which tends to kind of roll off people's tongues, even Donald Trump at the convention said LGBTQ and smiled as if he got it right.
Knows what it means.
Right? He doesn't know what it means. He doesn't care, but I'm not saying he's an ally. But it sort of rolls off folks' tongues as if it's kind of an effortless community, and yet the community itself has enormous fractures around race, ethnicity, around gender, about all these different identities. And so, we're fighting both inside and outside the community and the movement and the larger society. What do you think it is that makes people so afraid and so fearful and also discriminatory towards transgender people in particular? What is it that you think is at the core of the resistance to your humanity?
So when a baby is born, what's the first thing somebody asks?
Right. Boy or girl?
Boy or girl.
Yeah. Or are you having, even before, are you having a boy or girl?
I have before the baby's even conceived sometimes,
Yeah.
So, and then what do? You buy blue or pink, you buy, and that's fading a little bit, the blue and pink thing. Yeah. But, and Walmart, or I think it's Walmart, got rid of their gendered toys. Right. But from literally before you are born, everything is male or female. Yeah. And when, what's the first thing you notice about somebody walking down the street? You're probably not going to notice the color of their hair or what they're wearing or how old they are. The first thing you're going to pick out about them is their gender. Right. And if you can't figure out their gender, you're going to be you're going to wonder. You know what I mean? And that's just people. And part of that is just I think normal human nature, just to box things into groups. And we are taught from literally from before we were born to box things into boy and girl. Yeah. And I think that the whole concept of a transgender person just screws that up. Yeah. Because if you can just change that, that's the most fundamental, the first thing that you know about something, if you can just change that, then what else is stable, or isn't? And I don't see it that way, but I can understand how other people see it, and I don't know if everybody sort of quantifies it that way, but I think that gender is so important in so many ways to somebody's like concept of what the world is and what people are, that to change it is just so world-shattering.
Right.
And I think it's destabilizing, and I think that it's even more destabilizing than coming out as gay or lesbian, because in reality, like let's say I would come out as gay right now, it doesn't change how I interact with anybody except for maybe some of the males I'm interested in, right? And it doesn't change how they interact with me unless they're gay too.
Right.
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 Whereas as a trans person, so I've come out as lesbian, I've come out as trans, and when I came out as trans, I had to ask other people to do things. I had to ask you to talk to me differently, to call me different pronouns, to respect me not respect me differently, but you had to see me differently. You had to change your concept of who I am, and I was very adamant to people that I wasn't changing as a person because I'm not. I'm the same person inside that I've always been. My presentation and my look is different. But it was very hard for some people, and still for some people, to realize that I'm still the same person even though my shell looks different. And my pronouns are different. But I have to ask something of other people. And I think that also is different about trans people. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just like I'm invading other people's lives. And for parents, you're killing a concept. And that concept they thought was their daughter or their child or their son or whatever, and they named the kid. They raised it in pink bows or blue jumpsuits. You know what I mean? And so that is so shattering to somebody. And I've seen that firsthand because my mom and my dad are the most accepting people I know. They're so wonderful to me, and they are the reason that I'm living, not because only they conceived me, but because they didn't bully me in my transness. But at the same time, they have had a really difficult time letting go of their daughter.
Of course.
And I don't blame them for that because I've had a difficult time letting go of the woman I thought I had to be, But that's all. There's more mourning, I think, involved in being trans. There's more disruption of what people think is normal. And then if you go into the bathroom side of things, there's a lot of hate propaganda and fear mongering that happens there, because then it's the whole a man can dress up in a dress and go into a women's bathroom and rape my daughter.
Right. So the harms children discourse.
Harms children, easy to push.
Right.
And it is, I think it's pushed by educated people, but it's pushed onto the masses, and they don't have, if you're going to choose between let some random trans kid in the bathroom and have them be happier, or but then at the same time potentially let a rapist into the bathroom to rape your daughter. What are you going to choose? No or yes?
Yeah, totally. And they always go there, right? I mean, there was.
That's what I'm saying. That's the argument that they use, and I have plenty of counter arguments to that. But I think that's another reason that people are fearful about trans people, is because they think we're all freaks who are trying to do weird things in the bathroom. But if peeing is weird, then everybody's weird. You know?
Right. Right. Exactly. I mean, Anita Bryant and Harvey Milk in the 1970s were having a similar battle over this, right? She was saying we got to get these gays and lesbians and queers out of the schools because they're going to harm your children. And this discourse of harms children, whether it's a sort of rapist raping your kid in the bathroom or what have you, is still this persistent discriminatory discourse that is placed on queer people over time. And it's interesting you'd say that, because I actually think, and I always make this point in public, which is every time we who are pro LGBTQ rights call anti-discrimination legislation and transgender rights legislation the bathroom bill, we are actually being complicit, not we, but we're being complicit in that discrimination, right? The bathroom bill framing is the framing of people who do not want you to be able to pee where you want to pee.
Well, actually, I think Laverne Cox said it really well. It's not actually about the bathrooms, and it's not actually about the peeing. I think that's a piece of it. But she says repeatedly, bathroom bills aren't about bathroom bills. They're about the right for a trans person to exist in a public space.
That's right.
And I think that's really important too, because it's not, like I said about earlier about going to the bathroom and how it was stressful for me. It wasn't about me going pee. It was the fact that I was stressed in public situations because I had to figure out how to navigate a public situation and also need to use the bathroom in peace.
That's right. That's right. Running back and forth.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to open up for questions. I have one final question for you, which is something that in preparing for this conversation tonight, I stumbled upon, in part because of that article, but also in part because of the way that you talk about photography. And I know that you have all of these gorgeous photographs, often of transitions, temporal or seasonal transitions of sunsets and sunrises of the Charles River, of water more broadly. And I shared with you that one of the things
I do like water.
Yes, we do like water. One of my favorite places on campus is the Weeks Footbridge.
Right.
And it's a place that I go during moments moments of disruption, transition in my own life. I watched the sunrise with my husband and best friends after our wedding. When Trump got elected, I went there and had a meltdown. When my grandparents passed away, I spent time there, and I was struck by the fact that you too kind of document through photography these moments, right? These locations. But I'm also interested more broadly in how that figures into your kind of aesthetic sensibility, right? You talked a lot about your hair, but clothes. You have, you have tattoos, and they're very meaningful. The watch, right?
Yeah.
Glowing watches,
Glowing
right?
watches,
Right. And but how does your kind of aesthetic sensibility, photography, poetry, tattoos, what you wear, how does that factor into your identity? How is it, I guess, an outlet for expression, but also documentation of representation? And by the way, his photographs are beautiful, absolutely gorgeous.
They're just pictures.
They're
I don't know. I developed an obsession with clouds while I was in treatment in Miami. And for those of you who have never been to Miami, Miami has these gorgeous, huge, like cumulus nimbus clouds from the ocean washing up, and they're just, I don't know. I love them. They look like giant cotton candy. I actually hate cotton candy, but I do like the clouds that look like cotton candy. And I started taking pictures of them, and it was, I think this is going to sound ridiculously cliche, but through treatment I learned a lot about stopping at the little things. My dad always said, like, Skylar, there are always roses. You should always stop to smell the roses. And I kind of started doing that with the clouds, and it was something where I was just like, these are so beautiful. Like, I never noticed them before. And I just started taking pictures of them, and the more I did that, the more I realized that they were better at sunset, because at sunset they turn different colors, and so then I started timing the sunsets. And I'm a pretty OCD person, so I continuously, like, this exact time, and if the sky looks like this 20 minutes before the sunset, then it's going to look really great 20 minutes from now. And a couple of my friends are here, and they know that I am very serious about the sunsets. And I go and I watch them, and I sit there for about an hour, because you got to be there 20 minutes before, you got to be there for the actual sunset, and then you got to watch afterwards, because when the sun goes down, then the clouds do these. It's really cool. Anyway, so I started taking a lot of pictures, and it just became something that I did. And also, my socks have clouds on them. I always wear those to speeches. Some of my best friends got them for me and was like, "This is perfect. You can walk on clouds now." It was really sweet. But I don't know. It's been something that I think it's the moment where the day changes, specifically the sunsets and the sunrises. And the sunset has always been a time of, like, it's beautiful to me, but I'm also freaking out the entire time. And it's like, part of it is because I really want to get the perfect picture, but the other part of it is because I think I can feel the day slipping, and I can feel something like being finalized. And I have written multiple poems trying to quantify what that feels like. And it feels, I think they're like little mini New Year's, like on like New Year's Eve, where everything's changing. The next day you're gonna have to make your New Year's Eve list or whatever, and everything's a change. You have to scribble the letter or the number over the number you already wrote for the last year. There's like, and it feels like that every sunset. And I think part of me is mourning the day that I've just completed, and another part of me is excited for the next day. Another part of me is wondering, like, or thinking about the fact that it's never going to be that moment again. And I want so badly to, like, hold on to it. And I think that comes from losing so many moments in the past, from not looking at them, not being there for them, and not being present for them, because I was never fully able to be present when I wasn't fully able to be myself.
I think when you've lost time becomes more precious.
Yeah,
right?
I guess
no
so.
question about that. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that reflection. All right, so we're going to now open it up for questions from all of you. But Skylar, do you want to talk the ground rules before we?
Okay, So a couple of little points. Another half-naked picture of me. Okay, so when I do questions, the first thing is, you guys also have little pieces of paper that say all of this, but just to run through real quickly. So transgender, the words trans and cis come from the Latin roots trans and cis. Trans means to cross a boundary, cis means to be on the same side. So if you identify as transgender, you do not identify with whatever was put on your birth certificate. So I had F on my birth certificate, I identify as male as M. If you're cisgender, you identify with what was put on your birth certificate. Too eager. Transition is just a term literally in the dictionary that's from one state to another. In terms of trans people, it's just important to not talk about full transition or complete transition, because transition is a very, like, individual term. For some people, it could mean hormones, it could mean surgery, it could mean just clothes, it could mean just pronouns. It just, everybody's transition is different, and to imply that somebody hasn't had the full transition is to imply they are not complete, they are not whole, and that's not yours to decide. It's also not nice to call somebody not whole, but gender identity, sex, and gender expression. Has anybody seen the Genderbread Man in here? Okay, a couple of people. Oh, wow, that's a lot of people. Cool. So the gender by men is just another way of explaining this. But gender identity is how you identify. It's something that's kind of like, I'm not particularly religious, but I would say I'm spiritual. It's kind of like your soul, I guess. Sex is what you were assigned at birth. It's actually a combination of many things, including chromosomes, hormones, what genitalia you have, external and internal, and that kind of comes together to say your sex. And then gender expression is just kind of a societal box that you check. It really has nothing to do with either sex or gender identity or sexuality. And it's just like, so essentially, like female clothes are dresses and frilly things, and male clothes are jackets and ties, you know. But in other cultures that could be different. So it's kind of like a box that society has deemed male and female. So this I'm going to leave up there. But the last thing I like to say is I want everybody to ask real questions. This isn't a time where you're like going to step lightly around me. Hopefully you've gotten to know a little bit about me in the past, I don't know, what has it been, like an hour. I'm not particularly fragile, maybe a tiny bit, you know. But like realistically, like you can ask me real questions, and if you're scared they're going to offend me, then definitely ask them. And I'm not saying that because I want you to offend me. I'm saying it because like those kinds of questions are the ones we can talk about why they're not okay to ask, or I can maybe answer them. You can realize maybe they're not offensive. Who knows? Maybe you're like underestimating yourself. But my point is, ask real questions. And I'm not asking you to be rude to me or to be mean to me. I'm not super self-destructive anymore. So I'm an open book, not a punching bag. But do ask real questions. And the last thing, sorry, I babble a lot. The last thing is that though I am trans, I am not every trans person, and not every trans person is going to want to answer questions like I do. It's something that I'm very passionate about, and I'm doing this because I want to educate, but most trans people will not actually want to answer the kinds of questions that you might ask me. So don't extrapolate your experience with me to all trans people.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Questions. And they're going to be running the mic, so I'm not calling on anybody.
Yeah.
We'll take the first question right here in the front row.
Great.
Having
Also, if you could say your name and then maybe something about you, because I like to get to know people too.
Okay, my name is Ed. I didn't figure out that 2 and 2 equaled 4 and that I was gay until I was 22.
Okay.
So I have a certain amount of sympathy for some of the things you've been through.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things, and I wrote on the crew team,
Cool.
and I'm wondering whether before you joined the swim team, were the gay swimmers out to the rest of the team? And if not, did they come out to you after you joined? And
Okay, so actually there had been no gay people on the women's team that had been out before I showed up at Harvard. There is now one person who is out to me and out to several people on the team, but not out to everybody. On the men's team, there were actually both the captains 2 years prior to me starting were gay, and they were out, and everybody knew. And there is a gay diver that is out. There were 2 gay divers last year. Now there's 1 gay swimmer and 1 gay diver. So the culture on the men's team has been actually way more out than on the women's team, which is interesting to me. And it actually is reflective of my experience in the swimming world. I've met way more gay male swimmers than I've never met a gay woman swimmer, actually. Well, now I have, but I hadn't. So that is interesting to me.
Next question to your left.
Hi, my name is Steven.
Hi, Steven.
A little bit about me is I would probably say that my identity as gay shortly preceded my identity as an athlete. I never really felt like I was an athlete until the past few years, so
Okay.
it's been a new experience for me. My question for
athletes.
you is, having seen kind of dual perspectives that not all of us could identify with. We also hear a lot in the athlete and sport community about sexism when it comes to athletics. And so I'm wondering what kind of perspectives you've experienced on either side of the situation, having maybe a more holistic perspective than some of us.
Yeah, that's a great question.
We forgot to talk about
Yeah,
that.
we did.
We're
Yeah.
talking about the
That's
sex
I love
stage.
that's one of the important points is to talk about toxic masculinity and sexism. So yes, so I think like I do have a unique perspective because I've been identified publicly as female, and I've been identified as male, and I've been in both locker rooms, I've been on both sports teams, and I think that what was it, like a year ago when Trump was talking all this like locker room talk, and I mean he still does it, but you know, like the whole like boys will be boys. So I've been in male.
October. It feels like 100 years ago, but it was actually 7
Okay,
months. Yeah.
yikes. Well,
121 days and counting.
so I think.
Sorry.
No worries. I think that doesn't happen. I have never been in a locker room where my teammates or other men in the locker room have bragged about raping anybody. That doesn't happen. But there are definitely misogynistic jokes. There are definitely sexist things said, and people definitely talk about women. And what I will say though is that it happens in women's locker rooms too. So I have never been more uncomfortable than I was consistently when I was in the women's locker room, partially because I'm trans and didn't feel like I belonged in there, but also partially because women say a lot of things about other women's bodies that are not very nice, and I was not a fan of that. And there's a sort of nastiness that I actually witnessed in between women, but there was also just like sort of a counter side to boys talking about girls in boys' locker rooms. Girls, like I had plenty of girls telling me way too many details about their sexual experiences with men, like way too many details, and I don't think that's wrong. It happens. So, and I don't say it's not wrong because it happens. Like I think like people talk about their experiences. I was uncomfortable because I didn't identify the same way. But I guess what I'm saying is like that also happens on women's, and it happens both in women's and men's locker rooms. The thing where it crosses the line is I think that women are, well, first of all, women are more marginalized than men. Obviously, there is male privilege, and I think that women think about that more than men think about it. So, for example, I had a conversation with one of my friends who's a guy who said some joke that was like, he's a great guy. I want to preface it with that because I really do respect him. I think he's a really great person. But he made a joke, and it was in a group of guys, which makes it even worse because groupthink is huge. And he said something like, what's the difference between like jam and jelly? Oh, I can't like jelly my dick down your throat. And I was like, dude, like, what the hell, you know? So I pulled him aside afterwards, and I said to him, you know, that was really not cool, and I didn't like that at all, and he didn't really get it. He was like, well, you know, it was just a joke, Skylar. And I was like, I know, but it's still sort of perpetuating this culture, this rape culture, and if not rape culture, then jokes about rape culture. And I said to him, like, I've been on the other side of it. Like when I was on the women's team, we had a co-ed team, but so when I was competing as a woman, a lot of the boys were really crude about my body, and they had like my brother was so uncomfortable that he wouldn't go into the men's locker room because all they talked about were like my breasts and my body and the things they wanted to do to it, and so I had a specific fear of male swimmers because of that. But my point is, so he made this joke, and I was explaining to him, having been on the other side of the joke, how it makes me feel unsafe and uncomfortable, and he was like, I've never really thought about that before. And I was like, well, yeah, but like you have to. Like women are 52% of the population, and you know at Harvard like 54,
50,
you know,
yeah.
55.
Yeah.
So you have to think about them, you know. And he was like, you're right, yeah. And he was just sitting there and thinking about it. Like he's not a bad person. He just hadn't thought about it before. And I said to him, like, for example, would you ever, like, if somebody made that joke or joked about actually doing that to like your sister, for example, he's got a younger sister who he's really protective of, like, would that be okay? And he was like, no, absolutely not. And I was like, what about your mom? No, absolutely not. And I was like, okay, so then, you know, why does a woman have to be your sister or your mother to be respected?
That's right. Say that again.
So I think that it's more about education, it's more about how people are raised. And I think it's something that I've come in contact with a lot, and I don't always say something, and it's not because I don't want to or not because I don't feel like comfortable to, but I think that it's important to gain people's trust as a person before I like shout at them. And I always say like it's better to have conversation over confrontation. So I'm very careful with how I navigate those sort of like toxic masculinity / misogynistic / sexist comments, because I'd rather them hear me than them just stop saying them around me and say them in other places.
Yeah, that's great.
So we'll go now to the question right here in the middle.
Hi.
Hi. My name is Artemis.
Hi, Artemis.
Hi.
That's a dope name.
Thank you. This is a bit of a personal question. You've been an amazing trailblazer, and you being out as transgender has done a lot of good things. Do you ever wish that you could be, maybe now, maybe someday in the future, be at a point in your life where you're not, Do you ever wish you could be at a point where you wish people thought of you just as a
Skylar.
guy?
Yeah, where I'm not Schuyler Bailar trans. Schuyler Bailar trans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were talking about this
Yeah,
too.
sure. I think I was talking to somebody about this recently, but so yes, I think that in some situations I do wish I could be stealth. And for those who don't know, stealth is like where you just don't tell people that you're trans. You just get to be you. But being me is being trans, and that's true right now. And I don't know if that's going to change. You know, I am just a guy, but I'm also trans. And it's really important to me. Like, my history as a trans person is so rich and so important to me. I think that I never want to forget it. And again, that's how I am now. Maybe that will change. But while sometimes I wish I could erase the 4 years of my life where I looked like a girl, I don't want to erase those experiences because they're so important to who I am today, and they dictate and inform how I am today and how I can understand my friends, both male and female, in different ways. And I love that about myself. I really do. But there are definitely moments, and also, like you said, like I really, it's so important to me to share my story, again, not as Skylar, but as a trans athlete. Because, I mean, I've got many messages and emails and things saying like, oh, you helped save my life, or like, I didn't commit suicide because I saw this story, and like that's incredible. You know, like if like my picture, if my story can do that for a kid, I'm never gonna stop doing this, you know? And it doesn't matter that some days I'm like, crap, I wish so-and-so didn't know that I was trans because so-and-so said something stupid, you know? Because the positive impact that I see is so much more important than that. But sure, there are days when like I really wish that some of my friends' parents didn't know that I was trans because the friends' parents aren't that great. And you know, they're great as people, but they have different upbringings and they say shitty things. Excuse my language. You guys are all adults. With capital A's.
Can I just add something to this to brag about you for a second? That, you know, Skylar, since becoming a very public and visible leader and trailblazer, has also been, like any of us who step out in public, has had to shoulder lots of burdens. Like people emailing you and saying, I didn't commit suicide because I read your story, right, is a lot to hold.
It's worse when it's the other way around.
Of course. Yeah, no, I was going to say that, is that the range of ways in which people are connected to you now that they weren't, you know, even 2 or 3 years ago. And I just want to say, as someone who's spent a lot of time out there in public and doing movement work and public intellectual work and so forth, political work, it's not easy to keep putting yourself out there. And for someone like you at such a young age to take this on, I just want to honor that and to say how brave that is.
Thank you.
But also the Papa Bear in me also wants to be protective and say, you know, pace yourself.
Yeah.
John Lewis recently, I had the occasion to be at a dinner with John Lewis, Congressman Lewis. He said, do you want to be a guiding light or a firecracker?
Yeah.
Right. And he said, you gotta. It's a marathon, not a sprint, right?
Yeah.
And that you gotta keep.
I'm a sprinter.
Right, and you're a sprinter, right? And so I was too. So right, and you got to learn that. And I think, you know, I just want you to build the support network I know you have that you need to be the long distance freedom fighter.
Yeah.
And so you don't burn out, because what you're doing is so brave and you're taking on a lot, and it's not an easy thing to do. So I just want to say, admiration and props to you, but also, like, you know, let us have your back when you need to.
Carry.
Yes, right, of course. All right, next question.
Last question in the center section.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Matthew. Sorry,
Hi.
I never talk on this. It's weird.
It's okay, you get used to it. Or maybe not. Actually, I still don't get used to it.
Okay, so I'm warning, this is a bit of a loaded question.
Go for it.
While I am transgender, or I've been for a while now, I've stuck to my binary role for reasons, but in that regard, I've always been a bit of a conservative. And the other day, there was an article on the net where a boy was, during a private conversation at lunchtime in school, and to no one in particular, he said to his friend, fat people are gross. He wasn't talking about anybody, it was his personal opinion. And an obese girl who happened to be nearby heard it, reported it, you know, there was a police investigation, all this, and I understand, you know, it's not something you should say. But at what point do you think things go too far?
With political, okay, yeah, thank you. So I think, yeah, it is a loaded question, but it's okay, I like to be challenged. I think that political correctness is a very double-edged sword. I think that on one hand, it is important to respect other people the way they want to be respected, because that's, in my opinion, what respect is. But I also don't think that it's important to walk on ice all the time around people. And I think that there is a conception, and specifically with Trump supporters, but also with just with conservatism. Is that a word?
Yeah.
Thank you. That you have to be like politically correct all the time, and all of our youth are like freaking out about being politically correct, and the queer people are always super politically correct. I can't say anything around them, and I don't like that, because I don't think that's productive. And how the hell are you supposed to know what's politically correct for everybody all the time? Like you can't. And I don't know all the things that are politically correct for even the trans community. Like there are trans feminine folks so people who identify as female but were assigned male at birth, or any sort of on the spectrum towards female, that I don't see. Even there, I had to explain it. I don't understand all of that, and I'm a trans person. So I don't think political correctness is the goal. I think respect is the goal, and political correctness aims to respect but doesn't always get there. And I think it's really important to kind of think about it that way, and not think about this whole PC thing, because I think that just fucks with people. Again, excuse my language, but I think it just skews the goal to something else that isn't the goal. And people get so stuck on what's PC, when in reality, you just need to respect the person you're talking to. And respect can actually mean fucking up, but then correcting yourself. People have said things to me who are respectful of me that I would deem the comment disrespectful, but they are open to hearing that it is disrespectful. And we have a discourse about it, and I don't find them disrespectful. Does that make sense?
That's great. That's great. Yeah. So we're out of time for this particular part of the evening, but there is a reception right downstairs. But I just want to say one quick thing at the end here. First of all, thank you for you and for all of what you've given us tonight.
Thank you guys for coming.
And thank you to James and Lisa and everybody here at the Museum of Science for hosting this, and the Reno family for their generous gift to make these kinds of events possible. And just I wanted to say what an honor it is to get to know you, and I can't wait. We'll have 2 years together back on campus next year when you come back as a junior. But I wanted to end by saying something a friend of mine, Darnell Moore, who's a queer black activist and writer, wrote a really beautiful piece about a year ago where he talked about a queer project of, we often call it coming out, right, of telling our stories and being out and outing ourselves to others. But he talked about this other concept of inviting people in. Right, of inviting people into our lives and our identities and our experiences and our feelings. And that's what you're doing. That you're doing both, certainly, but you're also inviting us in. You invited us in tonight, and I just want to say how grateful I am that you were willing to do it with me and with all of us. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
And on that incredible note, thank you to both of you for being here and sharing during this important conversation. And we thank all of you for spending your Wednesday night with us. And we hope you leave here feeling as inspired as we all do. We do invite you to join us. The night is not over. One floor down in the Blue Wing for reception, Skylar and Tim will both be present to continue to engage with you and answer any questions that we didn't get to. So please stick around, and we'll see you very soon. Thank you.
Great.